Communications Environment Program, and I will moderate this webinar today. Next slide, please. Before we get with our program today, we have brief announcements. Please note that the webinar will be recorded. This recording and all material shared during this event will be made available to all participants in the Transforming Tourism website. The link will be provided in the chat box for easy reference for everyone. Due to the large amount of participants and limited time, we will receive questions and comments only through the chat box. So we invite you to type any questions you may have in the chat box. Please include your name and your organization with your questions. We will reply some of the questions throughout the webinar, and then a selection of them will be answered live during the event. Remember to mute yourself, turn off the video to ensure a good connection and discussion. Next slide, please. This webinar is a part of a series of webinars in capacity building to transform tourism value chains in 4 countries by reducing greenhouse gas emission and improving resource efficiency through a science-based approach, clear policies, monitoring and reporting tools, and the sharing of knowledge and experience. Since 2017, we have been mapping key environmental hotspots in value chains. Tackling plastic pollution have been identified as key priority reflected in the roadmap for the low carbon and resource efficiency tourism in the Philippines. The purpose of our webinar today is to provide an overview of how public and private sector actors can tackle plastic pollution in the context of the COVID-19 pandemic. We have an interesting set of speakers who will provide an overview of the impacts of the plastic pollution on the tourism sector and how businesses are making progress to fight plastic pollution and existing tools and initiatives. We will first hear a setting the scene about the evolving regulatory and business frameworks driving action in the Philippines. We will then have a presentation of the Global Tourism Plastics Initiative and the recommendations for the tourism sector to continue tackling, taking action on plastic pollution during the COVID-19 recovery. After this presentation, we will have 2 business leaders, representatives on concrete actions to fight plastic pollution. Finally, we will have a set of key messages of tourism businesses to address single-use plastics. The COVID-19 pandemic is highlighting the interconnectedness of our world and the need to prepare our people and the planet for what we call at UNEP, the triple planetary crisis. Resilience goes far beyond COVID-19. Today, we have to turn our minds to solutions to the 3 planetary crises that threaten our collective future: the climate crisis, the biodiversity and the nature crisis, the pollution and the waste crisis, at the same time that we protect our societies and people. Plastic pollution contributes to all those crises, with the decade of action already underway, and the SDGs to be delivered by 2030. Business and governments must use their networks and resources to solve the planet's most urgent issues based on a science-based approach and inspire others to do the same. I hope that the discussion today will bring inspirations and new ideas forward. Without further ado, I will pass the floor to Kiko Verhagen, who is the project officer at the Philippine Center for Environment Protection and Sustainable Development. Kiko, the floor is yours. You have 10 minutes.
Okay, hello. Thank you, Helena. Good day, everyone. I'll be presenting. So my name is Kiko Velhagen, and I'm the project officer of the Transforming Tourism Value Chains Project, or TVC for short, in the Philippines, representing the Philippine Center for Environmental Protection and Sustainable Development, Inc. And I will be presenting the results from our readiness assessment to increase Philippine ambition on plastic pollution in line with the Global Tourism Plastics Initiative. So I will be sharing progressing laws and initiatives against plastic pollution and some key highlights of our campaign to phase out single-use plastics in the hospitality sector. So next slide, please. So we first would like to make you aware of the roadmap for low carbon and resource efficient tourism in the Philippines, which has been formulated from the outputs of activities throughout the implementation of the TVC project. So the roadmap has four systemic solutions, in which one of those is zero pollution from tourism. The interest in conducting the assessment, exploring existing frameworks, and conducting an awareness campaign was mainly to address the roadmap goals of improving solid waste management and eliminate unnecessary problematic plastic from the industry. So in the next slide, to briefly set the context, we look at the amount of plastic Filipinos on average consume. According to Global Alliance for Incinerator Alternatives, Filipinos use about 60 billion sachets per year and 17.5 billion shopping bags per year. So additionally, these sachets comprise an estimated 52% of the residual plastic waste stream. So looking at the situation from the COVID perspective, we all know that our waste generation has been aggravated by the increase in the use of healthcare wastes, such as face masks and face shields. So, in the interest of public health and safety, in the interest of public health and safety, according to the Department of Environment and Natural Resources, just this year, 52,000 metric tons of medical waste was generated from April 2020 to March 2021. And so take note that medical face masks, probably the most common medical face mask, the most common medical waste, has a lifespan of 450 years and thus needs to be handled properly upon disposal. So in the next slide. To add regarding the statistics, and how plastics affects our coastal destinations. Plastic was also found to reach the deepest part of the ocean, in which we in the Philippines have recent proof of, given that plastic trash was found in Emden Deep, Philippine Trench. What is also very concerning in the Philippine tourism context is that plastic medical face masks and face shields have been found in the Anilao Coral Reef, which is a popular tourism diving spot. So in the next slide. So fortunately, there are already policy developments moving to address such plastic waste problems of the country. So for example, our Ecological Solid Waste Management Act of 2001. While this act is supposed to help address our plastic waste through mandatory segregation and diversion, there is still sadly a lack of implementation and enforcement for this law that has been around for 20 years. The most recent development concerning this law, which we strongly support, is the move of the government to formulate a list of non-environmentally acceptable products, or NEA. Soft drink straws and plastic coffee stirrers were made part of the list just last February. I'd also like to highlight some supporting action plans and policies not only to the Republic Act 9003, but concerning sustainable consumption and production in general. So one of which is the Single-Use Plastic Products Regulation Act, which is now for Senate review. Not only will plastic items be regulated, but the Act also promotes extended producer's responsibility and the fees and penalties would be used to support materials recovery facilities. We also excitedly await National Economic Development Authority or NEDA's SCP action plan, which explores applications of a circular economy model in the country. So the National Plan of Action on Marine Litter is currently in the works and will focus on solving the problem on marine debris through a more unified and systemic approach. In the next slide, the private sector has also been very active in addressing plastic pollution in their respective establishments. Some of the most common tourism business initiatives that we've noticed being implemented in hotels and resorts throughout the Philippines are water refilling stations and amenities, replacing single use plastic utensils, establishing their own materials recovery facilities, hosting beach cleanup drives with staff and guests, and conducting educational campaigns on the plastic problem and how their guests can take part in the solution. So, these initiatives, if complemented with monitoring systems to achieve goals and targets, can prepare an establishment in becoming a signatory of the Global Tourism Plastics Initiative. In the next slide. So, supporting the efforts of the private sector are various existing organizations with unique initiatives that are actively tackling the plastic problem. So, for example, Cleaner Oceans Project, Green Ants, and the PLAF, or Plastic Flamingo, are dedicated in their waste collection and upcycling efforts. So while the plastic credit exchange assists companies to offset their plastic footprint and become plastic neutral. So these kinds of initiatives have also already made waves with the general public and businesses with fast-moving consumer goods. So we invite all tourism businesses or destinations who would like to enhance or kick off their plastic initiatives to get in touch with these organizations. In the next slide. So, given the recent progress of initiatives in the public and private sector, so these next two slides will provide an overview on the gaps and recommendations of the Readiness Assessment Report, comparing it to the Global Tourism Plastics Initiative Common Visions. The Philippines is already on track to meet these characteristics, but much is to be accomplished in order to make impactful progress. So, for example, there are a lot of innovative alternatives of plastic packaging that succeed in utilizing local materials, but most are not widely recognized or supported enough for demand for these products to increase. Another timely example is that even though health and safety remain the topmost priority, there is a lack of informative campaigns that combat the stigma of reusables and refillables during the time of pandemic, when reuse models are still possible if robust and thorough cleaning procedures are adopted. We also have to have more information on what types of plastic are being used, how much of it is being consumed, and coordinate with the industries to fast track making packaging 100% reusable, recyclable, and compostable. In the next slide. So we can further reach these next three visions by improving infrastructure and innovation through extended producer responsibility and increasing collaboration with recycling and upcycling organizations. Other infrastructure solutions can be to utilize renewable energy and convert local materials, especially agricultural byproducts, into sustainable packaging. So, lastly, a practice which will forever be effective is increasing consumer awareness on existing market based tools, such as certification, safety standards, and other guidelines. So, with regards to the report's next steps forward, we also hope to enrich this report with the guidance of UNEP and the Climate Change Commission of the Philippines. In the next slide. So, what I will be presenting for my last three slides are some highlights from our campaign to phase out problematic single use plastics from the hospitality sector. So, with the aim to increase awareness amongst tourism stakeholders on the environmental problems created by single-use plastics and to gradually change behaviors. Our target groups are tourists, hotel staff, managers, and procurers. So this campaign was initiated and developed by UNEP and localized in collaboration with the Department of Tourism, so which is aligned with their Save Our Spots campaign. In the next slide. So with the help of the Department of Tourism, other than redesigning the campaign materials to the Philippine context, the initial messages of the campaign were also amended to include health and safety protocols and practices from the recommendations for the tourism sector to continue taking action on plastic pollution during COVID-19 recovery, so which you will hear more about later. We had our first digital launch or posting of the materials last December 2020 with partners, and we are organizing actually another one by end of May 2021 with translated versions and with more partners who will also share or post their initiatives against plastic. So in the next and last slide, the target of the second campaign launch is May 25 to 26, since currently many hospitality businesses are focusing on other things, and hopefully by this time they can participate in the campaign. So this campaign will not only increase awareness and encourage the sector, but is also tied to the project's next capacity building, addressing waste management issues through circular economy in the time of the pandemic, so happening sometime in June. For more information about the project in the Philippines, you may contact me. My email address will be presented in the next slide. And you may follow our Facebook page for news and updates at facebook.com/transformingtourismph. So my next slide will just show the details on which you can contact me. And so thank you and good day.
Thank you, Kiko, for your presentation, which gave us some interesting and pragmatic insights on how the Philippines have moved from an assessment to a campaign trying to transform tourism throughout its value chain. So I warmly recommend to all tourism business and organizations based in the Philippines to actively engage in the implementation of the roadmap that provide clear actions to beat pollution. As we have a rich program today, I would therefore like to invite Svitlana Miklaeva, coordinator of the One Planet Sustainable Tourism Program, to present the Global Tourism Plastic Initiative. Svitlana, the floor is yours.
Thank you so very much, Elena, and also thank you very much, Kiko, for a very good introduction already of the Global Tourism Plastics Initiative. Now I will walk you through a bit more in details, and also I have seen some questions already popping up on the chat about what is the definition of circular economy. So here we won't be able to necessarily provide you the definition of circular economy, but we will provide you some information about circular economy of plastics in the tourism sector. It could be initial response. So next slide, please. So the Global Tourism Plastics Initiative is a sectoral interface of the New Plastics Economy Global Commitment led by Ellen MacArthur Foundation, and the initiative aims to support a shift towards circular economy of plastics, where plastics never became waste. I think the shift of slides is a bit slow, right? So I just continue. So the Global Tourism Plastics Initiative is led by United Nations Environment Program and the World Tourism Organization in collaboration with Ellen MacArthur Foundation and under the umbrella of the One Planet Sustainable Tourism Program. Next slide. Yes, this one, thank you very much. So the initiative aims at working with all relevant stakeholders across tourism value chain, which comprise not only tourism businesses, but also destinations, suppliers, as well as organizations that do not necessarily have a high plastic footprint, but do have a strong influencer or multiplier potential, such as business associations, consultancies, and NGOs. And in terms of tourism subsectors, we are working already with accommodation providers, tour operators, and booking platform. And we are also collaborating with stakeholders from other subsectors such as airlines and cruise lines, even though due to current crisis, engagement of companies from these subsectors slowed down, as you can imagine. Next, please. So more specifically, the Global Tourism Plastics Initiative requires from tourism organization to make a set of concrete and actionable commitments by 2025 latest around elimination of problematic or unnecessary plastic packaging and items, introduction of reuse models, work on value chain level towards purchasing of recyclable, compostable plastics, as well as of plastics with recycled content, as well as work to improve recyclability and compostability of single-use plastics. And in addition, to ensure that the initiative goes beyond the scope of a simple pledging mechanism, signatories of the initiative commit to annual mandatory reporting that tracks progress made towards the targets that were set by signatories. And the initiative provides tailored signatory packs per type of stakeholder type of or per type of business, which explains in detail how different commitments can be defined. Next, please. So, in addition to implement these commitments, the initiative provides tools and knowledge sharing opportunities. Our team built a repository of tools of the One Planet website that provides a variety of guidelines, methodologies, and reports on circular economy of plastics, including those that we jointly developed with the support of the advisory group of the Global Tourism Plastics Initiative. Next, please. So the initiative was officially launched 1 year ago in January 2020 and counts now 61 signatories that feature leading tourism companies such as Accor, Club Med, Booking.com, suppliers, business associations, NGOs, consultancies, waste management platforms, and certification schemes. You can see them on the screen now. I just leave it for a few seconds so that you can just see the signatories that we have. Next, please. So now I would like to rapidly walk you specifically through the requirements for accommodation providers to show you how accommodation providers can become signatories of the Global Tourism Plastics Initiative. Next and next again, please. So first, here is the overview of commitments through which I will walk you through. For the moment, they are not on the screen. Let's jump to the next slide for the first requirement. So the first core commitment is around elimination. To become signatory, an accommodation company is required to eliminate by 2025 latest problematic or unnecessary plastic packaging or items from at least 3 areas. So by areas, we mean rooms or bathrooms or kitchens, so on. You get the idea. And in each area, at least one category of plastic should be eliminated, and it should be specified. Could you please go to the next slide so I can further explain what it means? You will see that in the first column, we will have the list of areas. So you will need to choose at least 3 of them. Here they are, yes. The first column, the areas. In the second column is about category of plastics. And the third provides examples of items or packaging that are part of this category. So you would need to choose at least one category per area. And we decided to structure our menu of commitments around category of plastics instead of mentioning exhaustive list of items or packaging, simply because we realized it wasn't possible to come up with an exhaustive list. Next, please. So for introduction of reuse models, which is the second core commitment, we request to choose 2 areas and at least one category of plastic per each area. In the blue box on your right, you can see, you can read an example of how this would be formulated. For instance, we will introduce reusable solutions in our rooms area to replace plastic items. By 2023, plastic items are plastic type that should be specified. Next, please. So the next requirement is to work on value chain level to provide data on recyclability and compostability of plastic packaging. In the box below, when it will appear on the screen, you will see examples of how commitments could be formulated. So an accommodation company can commit to engage suppliers to provide data on recyclability and compostability of plastic packaging, or to engage business associations to promote availability of data on recyclability and compostability of plastic packaging. The formulation of the commitment would depend on the context in which company is operating and geographical scope, and on the levers that the company can use to contribute to the improvement of the data on recyclability and compostability. Next, please. Next point requires a company to take action to increase amount of recycled content. Again, here you have some examples of what other commitments to respond to this requirement could look like. An accommodation provider can commit to establish procurement criteria on percentage of recycled content in packaging and items, or, for example, to engage regulators to promote availability of data on percentage of recycled content in plastic packaging and items. Next, please. The requirement around recycling rates expect an accommodation company to commit to collaborate with others and invest in collection and segregation of recycling and organic materials to help increasing recycling and composting rates in plastic. Here again, what is important is to ensure that signatories commit to work across value chain on recycling and composting rates. This could be done through coordination with waste service providers, training of staff on sorting of solid waste, as well as collaboration with other companies at the same destination to improve recycling rates. And by investment, we mean here different types of resources. This could be, of course, financial investment, but not necessary. It could be also investment of human resources and time. Next, please. So the last requirement is about reporting. As I mentioned, the reporting is mandatory. Large companies with annual turnover above 500 million USD are required to report through our One Planet reporting system. Smaller companies can go report through their own means, even though One Planet reporting is still encouraged. And we will be also requesting annually to provide data on volumes of plastic handled, meaning mainly for accommodation providers of plastic purchased. And this would be, of course, possible to keep these volumes confidential. And our team is working currently on the development of recommendations on methodology to measure the volumes of plastics. As a side note, the requirement isn't here around the reporting of plastic waste, but in plastic in operations. Next, and next again after this one. We will jump directly to the recommendations, please. So, and now for the last part of my intervention, I will present you the recommendations for the tourism sector to continue taking action on plastic pollution during COVID-19 recovery. We developed them upon the request of our network signatories that draw our attention to the increased use of single-use plastics since the beginning of COVID-19 crisis, just as Kiko mentioned in his presentation. So we developed the recommendations jointly with UNEP, UNWTO, and Ellen MacArthur Foundation and some of the tourism industry representatives, and to build them we used guidance from World Health Organization, UNEP, and authorities of some governments. And first of all, also I would like to mention that they are now available in 6 languages: English, French, Spanish, Arabic, Russian, and Chinese. Next, please. And as you can see, the structure, as you will be able to see, the structure of the recommendations on hygiene and plastics echo the vision of the Global Tourism of Plastics initiative of circular economy of plastics. And I will walk you just through a few examples now so that you can have a better understanding of what type of information this guidance is offering. Next, please. So the first, for instance, the recommendation demonstrates that single-use items represent additional touch points, meaning potential vectors of transmission of COVID-19. And according to the World Health Organization, direct contact with an infected person through touch points is a route of transmission of COVID-19. So reducing touch points that would allow this transmission to occur and ensure that materials and objects that would have been touched by a guest or a staff are properly sanitized is of utmost importance. So in addition, we highlight that plastic isn't a sanitization measure in itself, and prior to be offered to the use of clients, it should be decontaminated as well. So hence, the elimination of unnecessary items is the safest strategy. Next, please. To ensure that reuse models are safe, our recommendation focuses on establishment of sanitization protocols and procedures. In addition, we argue that reuse models allow better because more direct control over application of sound hygiene and sanitization protocols. In addition, the use of single-use gloves for standard operation of cleaning, cooking, and serving food or guests is not recommended. The World Health Organization highlights that use of single-use gloves can actually give a false sense of security. And I think I will conclude my presentation now. I still have some slides left. You can switch maybe my list on the very last one, just to show that in the very end of our guidance, we have some live stories, question and answers, showing basically how this guidance can be concretely applied. So I would really invite you to take a look, more closer look to this guidance, which is quite short and as far as quite practical. Thank you very much for your time and attention.
Thank you, Svetlana, for your presentation, which gave us very good insights on the commitments and ambition to increase the circularity in the use of plastics. This brings me to our next speaker, another committed leader, William Latour, Managing Director at Chao Beijing, who will share with us more insights on the work of Chao has undertaken to address the Global Tourism Plastics Initiative commitments. William, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Helena. So good afternoon, everyone. My name is William. I am the Managing Director of Chao Beijing in China. So considering I have only a few minutes with you to share our experience here at Chao, I will structure my intervention on 4 questions, which are who, what, how, and why. So who we are an independent private company investing in the field of high-end hospitality, art and culture. Chao is a young lifestyle brand answering some of the needs of a forward-thinking community of travelers, diners, and event organizers. Since the end of 2020, and thank you very much to Slevana for giving us this opportunity, we joined the UN Global Plastic Initiative. So what do? We design venues and experience that reflect the value of client, seeking high-end quality of service and opportunity to connect with similar-minded individuals. From the beginning, because we were new and we were creating a brand from scratch, we placed the protection of the environment as a cornerstone of our organization. So what did we do? We banned plastic, we banned single-use plastic from all the customer services. We favor sustainable material such as bamboo-based paper, sustainable packaging, corn-based compostable polymer, low-emission transportation, and any actions that would align with the principle of circular economy. How do we do it? We do it by systematically looking for the green alternative rather than choosing the most common solution available, and also by assisting our supplier when they don't have the right answer to develop a better, greener solution that would match our standard and ultimately will give them the opportunity to provide this product to other players in the tourism industry in China. We also communicate internally and externally on the importance of adopting a greener attitude. For example, in response to the COVID, we developed and we launched an initiative called Sparkling Clean that was aiming to increase our hygiene standard and assure disinfection of public area and touch point, as presented earlier. So we did by assuring that on one side, we would provide one of the most effective protocol in the industry, and yet without compromising to the intention to lessen our impact on the environment. So we used, as an example, electrostatic spray guns to diffuse antibacterial eco-friendly chemical in large areas and on flat surfaces. And we did that rather than using ready chemicals that were available in plastic container. We use washable fabrics rather than disposable paper, and so on. So by embedding the respect of the environment in our processes, we have created a culture inside the organization that has become the common behavior of most of our associates. Why do we do it? We do it for business ethics and brand perception. We believe and notice that our clients favor products that are respectful to the environment, transparent, and somehow kind. Our motto at Chao is creating the good life together, and this cannot be achieved without the consideration of our impact on what is directly or indirectly connected with us. What do we gain from it? First of all, we prevented somehow over 9 tons of plastic ending up in landfill because we removed plastic from the beginning. More recently, we added another 2 tons of plastic saving because we simply change or we change the regular plastic garbage bag that we were using by developing with a supplier an alternative which is corn-based, disposable and plastic. So what we gain also altogether is visibility, such as today, because we are invited to attend this webinar. And in general, we have gained also competitiveness on the market because we add this green attitude that we have, add one more element of choice for our client by giving them the opportunity to gain the global effort on creating a cleaner future. So as a matter of fact, and this is where I conclude, as a matter of fact, we don't see our approach as outstanding, but rather as the most suitable way and the only way to do business in the tourism for what is the environment of today. You can connect with me on LinkedIn. You can check our website, which is ilovechao.com. And we thank you for this opportunity that was given to us to demonstrate that all these attitudes that are advocated during this webinar are absolutely feasible and beneficial for a business as such as ours. Thank you very much.
Thank you, William, for your intervention, which gave us a little bit more understanding of the business context for operations and how measuring progress and volume of plastics can help to better manage and assess new markets. Next, I would like to invite another leader, Joe Hill Escobar, of hotel manager at Paradise Palawan, to speak about the hotel actions to engage staff, guests, and other organizations in a campaign to reduce single-use plastics. Over to you, Joe.
Thank you, Lana. Good afternoon. Again, thank you, PSEPSD and UNEP for this wonderful opportunity. Good day, good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever you are in the world. So we're happy to share our efforts with you. They're not as grand as others, but we are doing this one step at a time and proud of what we have achieved so far. We will continue to build and strengthen this campaign in the years to come for the purpose of protecting environment and also for future generations. I'd just like to give you a quick overview of our hotel, Club Paradise Palawan. Next slide, please. We are an exclusive 19-hectare island resort located at UNESCO Biosphere Reserve and in Coron, Palawan. And we're part of the Discovery Resorts Group, which is a proudly Filipino hospitality brand. It is a tropical paradise located in Dimaki Island amidst magnificent landscapes and seascapes with natural tourist attractions and exciting dive sites. We have an expansive 700-meter beach, and we offer several lounging options and a myriad of activities such as kayaking, diving, hiking, island hopping. Okay, we have a total of 62 rooms that offer the best views, the sunrise, the sunset, and the ocean, and lush gardens in the island. And we have our own colorful house reef, which is home to around 500 underwater species and assures wonderful snorkeling experience. For divers, we have an on-site dive center that provides programs for beginners and professionals alike. To preserve this piece of paradise, we engage in various sustainable practices and activities under the Eco Conserve campaign. An example is our nearby organic farm, which we call Taranuman, that produces fresh herbs and vegetables for the restaurant's offering. We also have our campaign to reduce single-use plastics, which I will share with you in a while. In relation to this sustainability, I am happy to share with you some of our accolades from a green destination. We are the only private entity that has made it to the top 100 sustainable destinations in 2020. And we placed third also the same year for the Sustainable Destination Awards under the Asia Pacific category. And just recently, we placed fifth in the People's Choice Awards 2021 from among the 100 nominees. Next slide, please. So much for the introduction about our hotel. And we now go to our campaign to reduce single-use plastic as part of the EcoConserve program of the resort. I'd like to share with you the three main objectives of this program. First would be to reduce single-use plastics and offer alternative replacements, to implement more environmentally friendly practices at Club Paradise Palawan, and to educate, elevate, and embrace the three E's. The Club Paradise Palawan team should fully understand the importance and implications of these practices, and it should be their way of life. Next slide, please. At the guest arrival, we want them to immediately see our efforts at the start of their Club Paradise Palawan experience. We used to give bottled mineral waters before and snacks wrapped in plastics, but now all refreshments on the boats are served in paper cups and welcome treats are now sealed in paper packaging. Next slide, please. As part of our Home Safe program, when guests enter the Sunset Villas, or any villas for that matter, their welcome care kits are set up on their beds, and each guest is given this set, and the bag is also reusable. So we put the face mask on paper care kits packaging, and we also give out refillable alcohols to all of our guests as part of, again, as part of our Home Safe program. In lieu of using plastic bags when going to the beach, next slide, please. So things won't get wet or sands won't get into your stuff. An oversized beach tote is available. It's washable and reusable. So instead of using plastic shopping bags, we use this reusable bags instead. These are all waiting for you when you enter the room. Next slide, please. Before, we used plastic bags for pressing and laundry services, but now we have switched to non-woven cloth materials. Again, we're sorry for the slight delay in the transition of the slides. Next slide, please. This is one of the major issues that we have actually tackled to eliminate the use of single-use plastics for bathroom amenities. We have replaced them with tamper-proof bathroom hand pump amenities, which are food grade, and these are made from Australia. Again, these are food grade, so these are environmental friendly. And we have done this a couple of years ago. Next slide, please. For everybody's information, the resort used to use, again, plastic tubes before for body wash, shampoo, conditioners, and lotions. So we're throwing out an average of 10,067 plastic tubes per month, which equates to 120,800 tubes average per year, on the assumption that, for example, we have like 30,200 guests in a year, and each guest used 4 tubes during their stay. So that's how the figure was identified. Next slide, please. For personal kits, we also use biodegradable packaging like cartons, and even our toothbrush are biodegradable as well. Next slide, please. In the past, we used to cover glasses and dinnerware with plastic wraps. Now, these are all made with with cloth covers, which are washable and reusable as well. Next slide, please. And also, one of our biggest problem before with single-use plastics is the use of plastic bottles, which we offer for a minibar. So to address that issue, the management has employed and invested actually on a water bottling and purifying system, which is from Europe. So we bottle our own water, which produces both still and sparkling water. And these are now being offered at our minibars and our restaurants as well. Prior to this implementation, the resort is actually throwing out 5,107 average, on the average, bottles per month, which equates to 60,000 bottles every year. Moving on to other departments like the food and beverage, although guests does take out food once in a while, we still made the switch to containers which are made from cornstarch and sugarcane. So all the stuff that you see there are actually biodegradable, from the utensils to the takeout boxes. These are all biodegradable. Even our takeout bag are made from cassava starch. And also, for restaurants, we took out all plastic straws, and now we are only offering paper or metal straws for our restaurant and our bars. So that's how our cassava bag looks like. So we also use biodegradable trash liners for all our trash bins inside the rooms and also for our public areas. Since some single-use plastics are unavoidable, for example, packagings of food items of guests or personal items like toiletries, supplies are bought in by the guests, the Eco-Conserve team came up with the Ecobooks Project. So I think everyone is aware of what it is. So we have started that almost like 3 years ago. So since we started, this is the initiative of the staff. In fact, I have required all the staff to make contribution to make to make at least one eco-conserve plastic brick, rather an eco brick. So we are able to produce 167 of that, which are made by the staff, and we use that to construct a vermi house at the resort's organic farm, which I made mention a while ago. These are for the African night crawlers in the vermi house, which produce vermicast, which are also used for the farm. And we want to cascade the information of, eliminating single-use plastics. So a couple of years ago, we have actually made this information campaign for selected grade school students and the local grade school here in our place. So they're actually able to make the eco bricks themselves. And furthermore, we would like to expand this to other grade school and high school schools as well nearby. So basically, that's it. And again, thank you everyone for this wonderful opportunity.
Thank you, Joe, for your presentation and your insights as well on how to communicate and incentivize the guests to address single-use plastic. Very good examples put on screen. Thank you for that. This brings me to our final speaker, Pablo Montes, who will help us understanding a little bit more about key messages on single-use plastics for the tourism sector. Pablo, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Elena, for the introduction. And so coming back to one of the questions that we're tackling is where to start when trying to reduce pollution from single-use plastic products. Then what product should I use then, and which material is better? And as you might anticipate, the answer is not as straightforward, or at least not entirely. To begin with, the best product to reduce plastic pollution is the one that is not used at all. Hence the emphasis and first element of the Global Tourism Plastics Initiative to begin by eliminating all unnecessary and problematic plastic products. The second best option then is the multi-use product, regardless of the material, but only if certain conditions are met. In the case of multi-use products, when multi-use products are not a possibility, given the inability to guarantee multiple uses or the high environmental impacts required to enable that multi-use, such as washing, the best product depends on the context and a series of other considerations related to the impacts that it generates throughout the value chain. Again, the answer to this question is not a straightforward one, and as we have seen from the speakers today, it will require a combination of approaches from elimination, transition to reuse models, and the use of some plastics such as biodegradable ones when it's technically viable to reduce plastic pollution. We will do this, or we're doing this at UNEP in the context of the Global Tourism Plastics Initiative by developing guidance that aims to translate the scientific report findings in a language that is accessible to the tourism sector and to the tourism practitioners, providing evidence-based information and making this also in a visual, appealing and compact format that can be easily shared within the tourism businesses. Moving on to the next slide, just to share where this is coming from and just to highlight the fact that this is coming from an effort from the UNEP's Life Cycle Initiative team that was tasked with this on resolving this question, trying to compare the alternatives to single-use plastic products on a particular set of products. The life cycles team, so please move ahead into the next slide, Maris. The team looked into life cycle assessments conducted across different parts of the world, across the globe, across a series of products and different set of alternatives. The findings of this analysis have been captured in a series of reports that provide recommendations for policymakers on what are the right policies, incentives, and disincentives to take into consideration when aiming to reduce plastic pollution. At the same time, reducing the risk of shifting the burden to other environmental issues, such as climate change or deforestation. In the interest of using this science and this effort that has been put internally within UNEP, the UNEP Sustainable Tourism team, as part of the Global Tourism Plastics Initiative, is working on translating these elements and these findings, again, for the use of the tourism businesses that is a different context than policymakers. The final document is still not available, but we wanted to make the use of this opportunity to share some of the key messages that are tied to it. You can see the main takeaways that are relevant across all single-use products that we looked into on the screen, and I'll highlight some of them. And also for your information, the products that we were using or that we have information pertain to plastic bottles, plastic cups, bags, cutlery, and takeaway food packaging. To begin with, again, replacing a single-use plastic product with another single-use item is equally impactful to a certain extent, regardless of the material, mainly tied to the fact that the production phase has a large relevance in the overall environmental footprint of the products. With this in mind, multi-use products should be prioritized when not a possibility to eliminate. And again, multi-use products, regardless of the material, are in general terms the best option. But this is only the case if they're used for a certain number of times. For example, reusable stainless cups, if used around 140 times, that would mean using it for 4 times a day for around 5 weeks, will perform any single-use plastic cup across all environmental impacts, regardless if it's washed by hand or by dishwasher. There are other series of considerations that will be better understood if working closely with the suppliers, such as the example that William highlighted today, on working with the suppliers to better understand their possibilities, but also to understand what are their production processes. If they're using low carbon energy sources, if they're using what type of materials they're using to produce the products. So what's the content of post-recycled content? The materials that are biodegradable, are they actually biodegradable? So these are the sort of questions that will be better answered if working with suppliers, and when needed, other supporting organizations such like NGOs or academia to better understand, for example, the biodegradability characteristics of the products. And then once the product is used, then there's a series of considerations on one end, if it's a multi-use product, to ensure that the impacts of washing it and making it available for the next use are reduced. And in the case when it's not multi-use, a series of considerations to ensure that the product is properly managed and disposed, being the ideal scenario that the product is recycled, and being the less ideal scenario or the situation to avoid that it ends up as litter. Now, as you can see on the screen, this is just an example of one of the products that we're working on, which is single-use products. That is a more specific version of the key messages that I have highlighted. In the interest of time, I'll just leave my intervention up until this point, just to restate the fact that we're working on the final version of these messages to make them available for the tourism sector and the tourism stakeholders. And the plan is to make these materials available by the end of second quarter of 2021, sorry. Thank you.
Thank you, Pablo. And thank you all this to all speakers, which I will request now to stay on the floor. Pablo, please keep with us for a few minutes more. And if others could join us in the Q&A answers question. Some of you have already sent questions during the registration period. We have some on the chat, and I without further delay, and we know that time is ticking, but please stay with us an additional 5 minutes so that we can have a little bit of insights of our speakers today. I will start with you, William. And you have mentioned very interesting numbers in terms of the reduced amount of volumes. 9 tons is quite impressive. So how do you measure and monitor your plastic use? And could you tell more about how you inform also about your plastic reduction strategy?
Okay, so how do we measure it? When I mentioned the 9 tons, we actually figured it out when we were preparing our document to join the initiative, because we simply calculated by not putting single-use plastic in our operation, we saved the 9 tons to end up in the landfill, because otherwise, should we have used the classic plastic option, it would have ended up with 9 tons. Now, there is another thing, like now we're starting to look at removing the remaining plastic. And last week, we started using corn-based disposable and biodegradable plastic instead of the classic plastic for our garbage bag. And this is easy because we know that over the year, okay, in 1 year, we use 2 tons of this material. So we removed 2 tons of classic plastic for a better material. So this is how we measure. And there is still more to be done, but we will continue. What do we gain from it? We gain a better image of the brand. People enjoy choosing a product like us because they feel that on one side, they come to a place like us because we provide entertainment and enjoyment more than just a function, and they have the feeling that they are buying the product that has a sustainable approach and that has somehow a limited impact. Of course, not a negative impact or zero impact, but a limited impact. And it helps us to gain a new customer or to acquire sometimes the business of large corporations, which are also, especially in the domain of luxury and fashion, which are also very conscious about this approach. So we gain on all sides. We gain because we contribute to a better world. We gain because we can say that this is the things that we are doing in order for Chao to be a lifestyle brand that reflects what matters in the world of today in terms of tourism, and also because it helps us to gain contracts and events from those companies that are also involved in the same activities or action. So it's a win-win situation for all.
Thank you, William. And I have another question also coming for Svetlana, and the question is, how do we get the value chain, the different actors that we have in the tourism industry, tour operators, suppliers, and governments to advance more sustainable tourism practices with regards to plastic pollution and destination level?
Thank you very much, Helena. I will try to respond rapidly since we have a few much time left. So very important point. It may appear as theoretical, but it's really not. The alignment with regards to the vision of all actors that are working on circular economy of plastics is super important. So we need to make sure that everybody understands that there is hierarchy when the issue of plastic pollution is addressed. First of all, when it's not necessary, single-use plastic items and packaging should be eliminated. After, second, in terms of hierarchy, comes reintroduction of reuse solutions when the items are necessary and they need to be offered to guests. When reuse solutions are not possible, this is when we start looking at recycled content to make sure that the plastics also that we are buying are recyclable, so on, so on. So that's just first idea. Second idea is that when we are working within the Global Tourism Plastics Initiative, as I mentioned, we are developing tailored packs for each type of stakeholder, saying what could be the added value of each stakeholder. So we are saying waste management authorities, we are working with you on these aspects, with suppliers on others, so on. And the other next point is what is really crucial is really collaboration between them. We are offering a global framework of collaboration, but for us it's extremely important to have more destinations, more governments signing into the initiative so that we can also offer the capacity to coordinate on a destination level. Because even though we have these global frameworks and we do provide guidance and methodologies and tools, coordination on a local level is still of a crucial importance so that you can have a better understanding of suppliers that are offered locally, waste management infrastructures, so on. So that's my short response. Thank you.
Thank you, Svetlana. And I would have another question as well to Kiko. Kiko, is there any policy in Philippines that prevents use of plastic packaging in some tourism products?
Yes, thank you for that question, Helena. So yes, based on our research, yes, there are policies that prevent the use of plastic packaging in tourism products. And what we see most common is that these policies are of a destination or a local policy. So for those of the Philippines who are familiar with cities, tourism cities and destinations, there is in Boracay, I think everyone's familiar with the transition that it made, and therefore the policy there is stronger in regards to plastic packaging. Other than that, there's also El Nido in Palawan, and one actually closer in the metro is Quezon City, where specifically the policy prevents restaurants in using and distributing uh, utensils, plastic utensils and cups, straws, coffee stirrers, and other disposable materials. And what I mentioned earlier in my presentation, that the bigger policy, uh, the the act that I mentioned, should be able to cover a bigger scope in preventing the use of plastic packaging, not only in tourism products but as a nation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kiko. I have another question to Joe Hill, because you have, Joe, and it's also a question of the audience as well. You have showed in your slides a lot of products that you have developed as alternatives, and can you tell us how you have engaged with these small producers and small businesses to develop these projects and to develop alternatives as well for these items?
Actually, for the resort, we do it in phase. We have to, of course, set our goals on when to adopt and phase out certain single-use plastics packagings, for example. So it takes a lot of timing, takes a lot of careful planning. And of course, for example, our purchasing department has to actually find sources because we're using traditional packagings and products before we actually got involved in this no single-use plastic. So it involves everyone in the organization and reaching out to sustainable suppliers which can provide not only us but for the entire group as well to provide it with sustainable packagings and eco-friendly stuff that we use now at the resort. So and then also it's a matter of changing. It starts with changing the mindset, and everybody changes the lifestyle, and eventually our plan is to make it change the culture. It starts with little steps, one step at a time. It becomes overwhelming at times on how we're going to do this. There's certain policies that we need to really do, and this sometimes our hands are tied because we have no control of things. But in your own small way, like what we are doing now, everyone plays a very important role. Like for example, in the hotel, each staff has to be trained and has to embrace that concept of and sustainability and environmental protection. It starts from there, and it radiates to how we deal with our staff, and we're happy that it's felt also by our guests, as evidenced by TripAdvisor and the comments that they give us. So it starts with small things.
Thank you. Thank you, Joe. I have a last question. I know that we are running out of time, but I think that probably we have a last gold question, which some of you that are businesses are asking you, and we had also being requested in the chat. So Pablo, what about biodegradable plastics? What are the key messages in relation to this?
So the short question is that it depends. It depends on the possibility of delivering the value that it's meant to deliver in terms of reducing the impacts at the end of life. So if the material is biodegradable in reality, in practice, under certain conditions, either in a landfill or the waste management system that exists in that destination, then it's a viable option. Again, second to or third to avoiding the plastic product if possible. In some cases, again, it's not possible to avoid it. Multi-use is also an option, but multi-use would only be feasible in the case of if the multiple uses can be guaranteed. So, for example, the cases of plastic bags, depending on the use, in some cases they can be reused, but depending on the function, for example, in bathrooms, they cannot be reused for hygiene purposes. So in that case, opting for a biodegradable option that is biodegradable in reality, in technical and practical terms, then that could be a good option. But again, the idea of this, the answer to that question depends on a series of variables. That's why we're focusing on giving different elements to inform decision making.
Thank you, Pablo. We are getting to an end of this workshop, and it's my work to close this. So I think that we have a key message here is that once the COVID-19 pandemic is over, we cannot return to business as usual practices that increase plastic pollution and put pressure on the main assets of tourism destinations. We have good leaders and inspirations that are already doing the job. Kiko has already mentioned some of the initiatives that already exist in the Philippines. We invite you all to join us and work together to make sure that beating pollution, biodiversity protection, and climate action are also at the core of tourism when we build back better. So thank you very much. Thank you for your time and attention. And please do not hesitate to contact us and the project team if you need more information. Here in this slide, you are going to see some of the events that we are going to do over the next days, and And here are the contacts of everybody that you have. You will also receive an evaluation. Please, this help us to improve for next time. Thank you very much and have a very nice end of afternoon and day. Bye.